So a question I get asked a lot is, what small form factor case should I buy? And that is of course a pretty difficult question to answer since they all have their strengths and compromises, whether that be around cooling or compatibility. Today I'm putting 3 of the most popular enthusiast small form factor cases head to head, the Ncase M1, the Ghost S1 and the more recent Streetcom DA2. Now we have done individual reviews for all 3 of these cases, so if you haven't watched those, I highly recommend you do. If not now, then at the end of this review at least, because I am going into this video, which is focusing more on cooling, with the knowledge that you already have some background knowledge and context of these cases. At the very least, you will know that I am a big fan of the 3 that we are looking at today. And they're not exactly cheap, they're about the same price that you'll pay for an enthusiast mid-tower case, but many argue that the price is justified due to the higher build quality, minimal design, and hardware optimization. I'm definitely one of those people. The Ncase M1 was my first PC case ever, and I personally didn't mind saving my money for an extra couple weeks to get my hands on one. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, Ali, what about the Dan A4, what about the Node 202, and what about the S4 Mini? And while I do plan on doing a complete roundup and a buyer's guide on small form factor cases eventually, today I really just wanted to compare these 3 since they all share one common feature, and that's water cooling. Now before you cringe about the idea of cramming a 240mm radiator inside one of these cases, installation is actually pretty straightforward. The Ncase M1 comes with a side bracket that can support up to a 240mm AIO. The Ghost S1 features a modular top hat, also allowing you to mount up to a 240mm AIO, but this time at the top of the case. And the Streetcom DA2 can support up to a 280mm radiator, also mounted at the side of the case on brackets. As you can probably tell, today's video is mostly going to focus on CPU and GPU cooling, but we will mention a few other considerations towards the end of this video. So let's continue where we left off. The most recent review that I did out of these 3 cases was the Streetcom DA2. I did test a 280mm AIO in there, cooling the CPU, but as we saw by the results, the delidded stock 8700K was already cool enough to see much of a difference. Today though, we're testing the i9 9900K with no restriction on TDP, and we're also overclocking that to 4.9 GHz at 1.248 volts. We will be taking a look at GPU temps as well, and there we'll be using the 1080 Ti SC2 from EVGA. Lastly, the coolers that we're using are the 240mm Kraken X52 for the Ghost and the Ncase M1, and the 280mm Kraken X62 for the Streetcom DA2. Now in terms of installation, the Ncase M1 is the easiest and most straightforward. Just mount the radiator to the side bracket with the fans on the inside of the case like shown, and then just screw the bracket onto the frame. You might run into some tube compression and difficulty with other AIOs, but thankfully the tubes on the NZXT Kraken are rotatable and are quite flexible. Also, I'm running the fans as pull against the radiator, pulling air into the case, as I've tested this previously and found it to be the most effective. The Streetcom DA2 is much the same, using the mounting brackets to mount the radiator to the rails on the frame. The Ghost S1 is the more difficult of the 3 and involves the most parts, but is still totally doable. This involves using the large top hat, which can mount to the bottom or top of the case, mounting the AIO to the bracket, then screwing the top hat to the bottom of the case to lock it in. You'll also need to remove the bottom panel on the case to put those side panels on. Also, it is worth mentioning that the first generation of Ghost S1 cases have an issue with the side panels of the top hat flexing when they're tightened. I'm not sure if this has been fixed with the next iteration. Alright, time to look at the thermals now, starting with the overclocked 9900K, and the results here were very unexpected. The Streetcom DA2 has the warmest result at 84 degrees C despite running the largest cooler. Then we have the Ghost S1 coming in at 80.5, and then we have the Ncase M1 over 10 degrees cooler at 70.2. Now, to make some clarity of these results, I really needed to do some more testing as I had no idea what was going on, especially since my previous testing with the Streetcom DA2 had it come out on top. So I switched the fans around on the DA2 to run them as intake on the radiator and exhaust air out of the case, but this just made things worse as I had expected from my previous testing. So after some messing around, I found that the problem were these. The dust filters. Since the Streetcom DA2 has no room for active exhaust fans with the radiator installed, it relies solely on passively exhausting the hot air. Now, that's okay if this case was as breathable as the Ncase M1, we'll get to that in a moment, but here all the hot air from the radiator is totally trapped. By removing the top and bottom dust filters, we see a significant 6-degree drop on CPU thermals, and things start to make a bit more sense. Now, the excellent result by the Ncase M1 can be explained by a couple things. Firstly, the two static pressure fans that I've got mounted underneath the GPU, bringing cool air into the case, are further accelerating the hot air from the radiator out of the back and top of the case. With these fans set to 0 RPM, the 9900K is now over 6 degrees warmer, and we get a closer result to the Streacom DA2. The extra ground made up by the Ncase M1 seems to be just how well ventilated the case is compared to the DA2, and this means that it's able to passively exhaust the air extremely well in comparison. Even with those bottom fans at 0 RPM, you can feel a ton of airflow escaping from the case. And coming back to the Ghost S1, we're seeing a warmer result here due to it having to pull air through the case before it gets to the radiator, but still it is able to beat the Streacom DA2 with the dust filters in its stock form. GPU thermals on the 1080 Ti were as expected. The Ghost S1 positions the GPU directly against a ventilated side panel, allowing for superb airflow. The Ncase M1 is almost able to match this but needs 2 static pressure fans, and the Streacom DA2 does get close with the bottom dust filter removed. So these results did surprise me quite a bit, as going into the testing I was 110% sure that the DA2 was going to win by a landslide. It seems that as soon as you run a hot system in there, the hot air just gets trapped without any active exhaust. Now, some considerations other than cooling. Build quality is slightly better on the Ghost S1 and the Streacom DA2. All three of these cases use an aluminium construction, but the Ghost and the Streacom use much thicker panels which look and feel more premium. I do prefer the anodized finish on those cases as well, but that's purely a personal preference. The Ghost S1 gets a +1 from me for its modularity. You can run this case water-cooled like we tested it today, or you can shrink it down to an air-cooled version measuring just 8 liters. The Ghost is the most expensive of the three though, and at least at the time of filming, it is a bit harder to get your hands on since there is a waiting list for each manufacturing run. And again, for a more extensive review for all three of these cases, please follow the links in the description. There we discuss things like hardware compatibility and air cooling in depth. And taking a step back from all of this and looking at this testing with a broader perspective, it's pretty insane that these cases are able to effectively cool an overclocked 9900K during an extended AVX workload. Also, an honorable mention to the ITX motherboard that was able to handle such testing, the Phantom Z390i from ASRock. This thing is an absolute champ when it comes to overclocking and handling all of that power, and the VRMs get adequate cooling. So guys, let me know your thoughts on this testing. It certainly was a surprise for me, and do stay tuned for a bunch of small form factor content coming up over the next couple weeks. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching. Consider subscribing down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.